Hallelujah. All is well. Amen. Nothing wrong with going back to the beginning, right? So this is a new beginning. So we're starting a new beginning. Amen. All right. So Ruth, chapter 1, from the beginning. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem of Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he, his wife, and his 2 sons. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi, and his 2 sons were named Mahlon and Chilion. They are Ephrathites from Bethlehem of Judah. They went to the country of Moab and continued there. But Elimelech, who was Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. And they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Ophrah, and the name of the other Ruth. They dwelt there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. So the woman was bereft of her 2 sons and her husband. Then she arose with her daughter-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in Moab how the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she left the place where she was, her 2 daughter-in-laws with her, and they started on their way back to Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find a home and rest, each in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that I may become your husband, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband tonight and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it is far more bitter for me than for you that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they wept aloud again, and Ophrah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. And Naomi said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods, and return after your sister-in-law." And Ruth said, "Urge me not to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said no more. So they both went on until they came to Bethlehem, and when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred about them and said, "Is this Naomi?" I'm actually going to stop there. The part I'm going to focus on right now is with verse 16 and 17. Where Ruth says to Naomi, "For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." The Message Bible, paraphrase says, "But Ruth said, 'Don't force me to leave you. Don't make me go home. Where you go, I go, and where you live, I'll live. Your people are my people. Your God is my God. Where you die, I'll die, and that's where I'll be buried. So help me God, not even death itself is going to come between us." I like that part. It's a little bit different than the Amplified. Not even death itself is going to come between us. The Common Jewish Bible says, "But Ruth said, 'Don't press me to leave you and stop following you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May terrible curses come on me, and worse ones as well, if anything but death separates you and me.'" So as you hear Ruth talking to Naomi, you can see from the words that she's using, you can see the loyalty that she has towards her, the devotion she has towards her, but the heart of a servant that she has towards Naomi. And then in the New Century Version, it says, "But Ruth said, 'Don't beg me to leave you or stop following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. And where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. I ask the Lord to punish me terrible if I do not keep the promise. Not even death will separate us." So she's making some powerful, powerful statements to Naomi. And just an amazing description of her, like I just said before, her loyalty and her devotion and her faithfulness that she had for Naomi, but just the heart that she had for this woman. Such a heart, and it was a servant's heart. You can really look at Ruth as how she was a servant to Naomi in this whole process of her meeting Boaz and going on and stuff, where she would do anything that Naomi told her to do. No matter what, she was so committed and so dedicated, she'd do no matter what. So when I was studying this all out this morning, I picked apart some of these words and looked up the definitions from them. So the first one, to serve. To serve means to perform duties or services for another person or organization. And interesting, the example that they gave out of the dictionary for this one was, Malcolm has served the church very faithfully. I thought that was an amazing example. I was like, this fits right in what I'm going to be talking about, a servant's heart for the church. So the synonyms for this was work for, be in the service of, and perform duties for. Another definition of to serve was be of use in achieving or satisfying, to serve a purpose, to attend to supply, to be of a specified use. And then interesting, it happened to pop onto another section and was giving nautical definitions. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of different, nautical stuff. But then one that I was reading, I was like, now that is good. To serve in nautical definition meant, now they're talking about using ropes and stuff, nautical-wise, but it means to bind, to strengthen, and protect. I thought, whoa, what are we called to do under our leaders here? We're called to bind to them, to help strengthen and protect them, and to help to be a servant to them so that we get the vision of this church accomplished. So whenever I read that, it was just like, oh my goodness, if you just really look into the depth of that definition, it means to bind, to strengthen, and protect. So then biblically, when you look at in the biblical terms of looking at to serve, they're talking about to serve God. When you're serving God, when you're being a servant within your church, it means that your entire life, which includes how you live, how you think, what you say, what you do, must be an act of service to God. So anything that we may be doing, whether we're here in this building or we're outside, actually maybe more important when we're outside of this building. So when we're in our places of work, when we're, at school or whatever it may be, it includes how we live, think, say, and what we do. And that's our act of service to God. So that was the definition of serve. So because the title of this was A Servant's Heart, I looked up, okay, the definition of heart. Now we all know our heart is the organ in our, the hollow organ in our body that pumps and circulates blood throughout us and keeps us alive and all that. But the other definitions of heart, the central or innermost part of something. So an example is like, so when you hear somebody say like right in the heart of the city, right in the heart of the city, it's the central or innermost part of something. The vital part or essence. So to have the heart is to have the vital part or essence or something. So if you hear somebody say the heart of the matter. And then another definition for heart was courage or enthusiasm. That was the first time I saw something like that. It's like courage or enthusiasm came under the definition of heart. And the example they gave to that was Mary took heart from the encouragement that was given to her. And I thought, oh, that is powerful. So you combine those two together with a servant's heart. And you're one who has the heart to serve whoever you're under, your church, to serve them with a purpose, to strengthen and protect them, to achieve the goal that they're going after, but to do it in a manner where it's your central or innermost part of who you are. It's the essence of your very being, and it's in a place of courage and enthusiasm also. We're to be for one, having courage, be strong and courageous like Joshua says, and then the enthusiasm to be spreading that out. So we're looking at that with Ruth, seeing that she has those characteristics with Naomi and how she just had that heart for Naomi. A rare thing, even as something that nowadays is a very rare thing that you hear about. And so she just had that heart for Naomi. So then the other two I decided to delve into more was the word loyalty, because Ruth definitely exemplified loyalty to Naomi no matter what. So loyalty was a strong feeling of support or allegiance. And the words that came along with that was faithfulness, devotion, bond, commitment, and obedience. And then the other word, devoted. Devoted means give all or a large part of one's time or resources to. So when you look at Ruth was so devoted and loyal to Naomi. In the loyalty, she had a strong feeling of allegiance to Naomi. What did she say to her? Where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die. If that doesn't speak allegiance right there, I don't know what does. Where you die, I will die. Where you buried, I will be buried. And not even death can separate us. That's a strong commitment of loyalty and devotion and allegiance that she had to Naomi. It was going to be, no matter what, we're in this to the end together. And so the word similar to devoted was faithful, steadfast, committed, dedicated, constant, attentive, caring, and set aside. And when they were talking about set aside, they were talking about, are you being a servant, a true servant to where you're called to serve to? So we're talking about here, the church. Do you set aside what might be on your agenda to put the agenda of here first? Do you set aside what God's called you to do here? Set aside your own personal stuff to what God has called you to do here. Now, are you, when you think about yourself as being a servant, and if you examine it, whether you have a servant's heart, would you characterize yourself as faithful or steadfast or committed or dedicated or constant or attentive? And these are all these quality traits that Ruth had towards Naomi. And as Jordan and I were saying on Sabbath, what ended up happening? Naomi led Ruth through this whole journey of meeting Boaz, her kinsman redeemer, and connecting along with that and having this tremendous blessing just take place with the whole connection that happened with Boaz. And it was out of Ruth's total commitment and desire to serve Naomi. And that's the total commitment and desire we need to have to serve those who, to serve who we are called under, being mom and dad, but ultimately because we're serving him. And to develop that servant's heart, that loyalty, that devotion, I just think Ruth is such an amazing example of how she displays all of this. And when you go to chapter 3, verse 5, verse 4, when Naomi is talking to her about how to, go to Boaz and lie down at his feet and stuff like that. And what does Ruth reply to her? Ruth says to her, all that you say to me, I will do. She was so committed to serving Naomi no matter what, that her instant reply was, all that you say to me, I will do. It wasn't a question of, well, I'm not sure if that's going to work. What if something happens? Or, well, I wasn't really thinking about doing that tonight. I had a long day gleaning in the fields. I'm tired, need to take a shower. I'm pretty sweaty and dirty and stuff. I don't think he's going to appreciate me laying at his feet anyways without showering. She didn't think any of this stuff. She didn't think anything of her own self, her own agenda. And she was working out in the fields all day that day, how many of us have been out at work all day and stuff, and our thought towards the end of the day is like, I just want to get home and sit back and relax with my, for me, it would be my seltzer water and Bonitos, just sit back and relax and stuff. And that's what my plan, I've been thinking about it all afternoon. When I get home, that's what I'm doing. Nobody bother me. I'm sitting down with my seltzer and my Bonitos, and something comes up that needs to be done. Say here, something comes up, and it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to be instant that I was like, what, all that you say to me, I will do. Whatever it is that you need done, I'll be there to do it. Is my desire for my Bonitos and my seltzer water going to override what needs to be done? And I could think to myself, I'll get to it tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. I'm not doing anything tomorrow. Why can't I wait until do it tomorrow? But there's a reason why you're being asked to do it at that moment, at that time. And, that's where the whole thing of where submission all comes around to it. Are you submitted? Are you submitted to the cause? Are you submitted to the vision? Are you willing to give it your all out? Go for it all the way. And Ruth, I just think Ruth is just an awesome, awesome example. She trusted Naomi And I know how many of us, how many of these single young girls, or even us before we were married, how many of us would have been like, yeah, I'll trust my my mother-in-law to hook me up with my next husband, you know? No, I don't know if I would have done that. But she had such a trust in Naomi, such a knowing that Naomi was doing this for the better of Ruth. You know, she had such, and Ruth has such a trust in her that there was something like that. That's a serious commitment. You know, that's a serious thing, saying, okay, you're saying this is the man for me, okay, and I'm going to walk this out step by step. You know, that was a complete just surrender of Ruth to Naomi in an area like that. And what is one of the most important decisions you'll ever make in your life? You know, who God tells you to marry. But one of the most important decisions you can face, and she trusted Naomi completely. And look what happened. I mean, we all know the story of Ruth with Naomi. And look at the power that came forth out of that whole thing, and the connection of Boaz and the lineage as it followed through. And so, you know, like what she said, all that you say to me, I will do, I will do. And so I think we just need to learn some things from Ruth. You know, and you study out her relationship with Naomi, and you pick up these character traits of having that servant's heart and being devoted and committed and loyal and faithful, and applying that to our present day, where we are here, you know, at this church, where we have our leaders over us being mom and dad. You know, what are we called to do here? You know, we look at ourselves, and it's like, are we going to say we're in it all the way? We're in it to the end no matter what. You know, we're going to take the stance as Ruth did to Naomi, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do it. You know, wherever you die, I will die. You know, your people are my people, your God is my God. That's a major, major thing to make a statement like that, especially where Ruth, and Jordan had pointed this out on Sabbath, where Ruth left. She had the opportunity to return back to what was comfortable to her. She had the opportunity to go back to, you know, her mother and father and her family and her, you know, all her old friends from growing up and stuff, and her past. She had that opportunity was presented to her. But with inside Ruth, she knew. She's like, no, Naomi is the one I'm supposed to be with. You know, when she says back in chapter 1 where it says they're saying goodbye to each other, and Ruth clung to her. You know, Ruth clung to her, would not let Naomi go. And it's just like, are we clinging to what's important to us here? Are we clinging to the vision that's been brought forth at this church? You know, are we clinging to mom and dad like the way we should be? Are we clinging to whatever God has called us to do the way we should be? You know, and we don't just have callings here. We each have assignments in our daily lives that we've been called. God's placed us each in a place during the day to be a servant to somebody. You know, you hear Dad talk about it all the time when, like, you're at work. You know, how can you serve your boss? You know, what can you do to make it, even if your boss is not the nicest guy in the world, you still want to have a servant's heart towards them. You know, and you know, anything is, you know, not for us here because we're not coffee drinkers, but, you know, get them a cup of tea, or, you know, for me, it'd be like, I got a seltzer water you can have, would you like it? You know, but anything like that. You know, do we have the taste and that desire to have that servant's heart? So it's interesting, as I was going about doing the study this morning and looking what at a servant's heart was, and to serve and stuff, and the Bible has all these different examples. You know, you had Moses who served Yahweh by bringing the Israelites out of Egypt, and that whole thing that Moses did. And Moses was the chosen man for the hour. You know, God saw something in him that Moses didn't see in himself. And left to his own, Moses would have been probably like, now I'm out of here, forget this, you can pick somebody else to do this. But Yahweh knew what was in Moses. And here you have one of the biggest stories of the Exodus and the biggest deliverances that Yahweh did, with Moses being the chosen man to lead him out of it. And then you have other examples of David and different battles that David went in and fought. You know, Joshua and Caleb, you know, serving, and their whole thing was, you know, who cares about the rest of them? You know what, we'll go and take the land. You know, the two of us will do it, you know, for Yahweh. You know, another example, you know, like we touched on Sabbath with David and Jonathan. You know, Jonathan, again, another example of a turning away from family. You know, Jonathan turned away from his father. His father was king. He was Saul. And Jonathan turned away from his father because of his heart for David and because of the covenant. You know, we discussed that, because of the covenant that he had with David, and he was sold out to David. And it was another example where David had said to Jonathan, okay, you tell me what to do, you know, to escape Saul, and I will do it. And you see all of that. It's all tied into part of the servant's heart. You tell me what to do, and I will do it. So then, you know, different examples throughout the Bible and stuff. But it was interesting because when I was doing the study on a servant and stuff and looking at the different things, one of the things that had popped up was giving me all these things, like I had said, the examples of Moses and David and stuff, and being a servant. You know, parts in the Bible where servants are referred to as slaves. So in Ephesians, it talks about slaves to your masters and stuff like that. So servants were slaves in some areas and stuff. But another key word, which I thought was really interesting about being a servant, came up the word armor bearer. And you don't really hear that too much at all anymore. You know, that was like a thing of the past and stuff. Rarely, I mean, I think maybe the entire time that I've been here, which has been quite some time, maybe once listening to teachings out there and stuff that I hear one thing being taught on an armor bearer. And it's like you don't hear that anymore. So I thought, okay, you know, let's delve into that category of a servant's heart. Because to be an armor bearer, you had to have a servant's heart. And back in the Old Testament times, when somebody was called as an armor bearer, you know, an armor bearer was the one that carried the weapons for the warrior. You know, he was the one that stood right alongside his leader, his king, in the heat of the battle, and went along with him no matter what, and he carried the weapons. And, you know, but there's so many more different characteristics about being an armor bearer. And I just thought it was really, really interesting. So I delved into that a little bit. And so it actually had come across my path, this devotion that I was reading. And I thought, wow, okay, this like fits right in. So a couple of different examples with armor bearers. And you see the first one was Abimelech. So in Judges 9:45 through 55, it talks about the story of the death of Abimelech. And that's where actually this book was going into, talking about servants. And this part here keys in on what I was just talking about, the characteristic of being loyal. And so it says, a good example of the loyalty of an armor bearer is found in the story of the death of Abimelech. Even though Abimelech was wicked, the loyalty of his armor bearer is obvious. He was the closest person to the king when a woman threw a stone which struck him on the head. He was just as concerned about Abimelech's tainted honor as Abimelech was himself. He did not want it said that his officer had been killed by a woman. His instant obedience is recorded, and this was in verse 54 of Judges 9, and his young man thrust him through, and he died. So I don't know about you, but for me, if I was back in that day and having to be faced in that situation, it'd be like, are you kidding me? You're telling me I need to kill the one that I'm absolutely devoted to, absolutely like serving and is committed to the very end. You know, and it was a little bit different back then when things like this took place. But so then another example is actually with Saul. So in 1 Samuel 31, and it talks about 1 Samuel 31:4, when they're in the battle and stuff, and Saul says to his armor bearer, "Thrust me through with a sword so that I'm not caught by this is my paraphrase. So I'm not caught by the enemy, and the enemy does with me whatever they want to." But his armor bearer was afraid and wouldn't do it. So it says Saul's army, realizing that defeat was imminent, turned to flee. His men, including his sons, were killed, and Saul was wounded by arrows. Through the fighting, Saul's armor-bearer had managed to stay alongside his leader. Saul wanted to die at the hands of his armor-bearer rather than be captured and tortured by the enemy. However, his armor-bearer would not oblige him. This man had spent all his time in Saul's service, caring for and protecting him. His entire reason for being was the preservation of the life of the king. And it was like, when I read that, it was like, wow, this man so knew inside of him, had such a heart to serve Saul, that he knew that the entire reason, his entire reason for his very being, his entire reason for him, his very life being on earth, his entire reason for him being born, his entire calling and purpose on this earth was the preservation of the life of the king. If there was even the slightest chance, this was part that I really liked too, if there was even the slightest chance that Saul could be saved from destruction, then he had to take that chance, regardless of the odds against its success. I was like, wow, all right, that speaks volumes. It spoke volumes to me. It was just like, you know what, if there's anything, if there's even one last little thing to stop this vision from being destroyed, I'm going to go at it with everything I got. I'm going to take whatever I can. You know, like you said, he had to take that chance regardless of the odds. He didn't care what the odds looked like around him. You know, he didn't care, you know, if him and Saul were surrounded by hundreds of warriors and stuff. It was like, but there's even one slightest little glimpse that I can save the life of my king, I'm going to do it. And that was just like, what a loyalty and a commitment, but what a heart to serve Saul. You know, this is literally, you know, literally a life and death situation. And it was just like, it was just interesting as I was reading that. It was like, that was just very, very powerful. So then, you know, they were talking about the Old Testament armor bearers and stuff like that, and these two different stories and everything. And this was in the Old Testament, obviously, also, with Jonathan. And Jonathan had an armor bearer. And if you actually look at, we're going to actually look at the relationship between Jonathan and his armor bearer here. So it goes, it's 1 Samuel 14. So in this 1 Samuel 14, from verses 1 to 23, you see the relationship that was between Jonathan and his armor bearer. So starting at verse 1, and I read the Amplified. So one day Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his armor bearer, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine garrison on the other side." But he did not tell his father. Saul was remaining in the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Migron, and with him were about 600 men. And forgive me if I get some of these pronunciations not quite right. And Ahiah, son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, the son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh, was wearing the ephod. And the people did not know that Jonathan was gone. Between the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistine garrison, there was a rocky crag on the one side and a rocky crag on the other side. One was named Bozez and the other Seneh. The one crag rose on the north in front of Michmash and the other on the south in front of Geba. And Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, "Come, and let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us. For there is nothing to prevent the Lord from saving by many or by few." And his armor-bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your mind. I am with you in whatever you think best." Jonathan said, "We will pass over to these men, and we will let them see us. If they say to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand still in our place and will not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' we will go up, for the Lord has delivered them into our hand, and this will be our sign." So both of them let the Philistine garrison see them. And the Philistines said, "Behold, the Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have hidden themselves." The garrison men said to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, "Come up to us and we will show you a thing." Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, "Come up after me, for the Lord has given them into Israel's hand." Then Jonathan climbed up on his hands and feet, his armor-bearer after him, and the enemy fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer killed them after him. And that first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor-bearer made was about 20 men within about a half acre of land. And there was trembling and panic in the Philistine camp, in the field and among all the men. The garrison and even the raiders trembled. The earth quaked, and it became a terror from God. Now here it was, just two men Jonathan and his armor bearer. And in this part where I want to focus on was verse 7. So after Jonathan says what he says, his armor bearer says to him, "Do all that is in your mind. I am with you in whatever you think best." Kind of like Ruth when she said to Naomi, "All that you say to me, I will do." He's pretty much saying to Jonathan, whatever you say goes. Whatever you decide, I'm in it. Whether he agreed with it or not. Whether he thought, oh, maybe we should go up around this way, or whoa, let me talk you out of this, because there's many, many more men than us. And, in the natural, it looks like we may be like gone, but he didn't. This armor bearer had such a heart to serve his leader and was so loyal and committed in these instant responses. The instant response, and that's where it shows you it's a heart matter. Ruth's instant response, all that you say to me, I will do. Jonathan's armor bearer's instant response, do all that is in your mind, I am with you in whatever you think best. So then I looked this verse up, a couple other translations, just to see what they said. The New King James Version said, his armor bearer said to Jonathan, do all that is in your heart. Go then. Here I am with you according to your heart. So he's connecting with Jonathan's heart. This wasn't a flesh matter. This wasn't just a general whatever. It was connecting heart to heart. Interesting, when I was looking at this whole thing with the servants and it came about armor bearer, and I'd never, ever, ever seen this before. And I recorded it. I was going to bring it, and I left it at home. But it was talking like the scriptures and stuff, and it was armor bearer, armor bearer, armor bearer. But in this translation, every place where it was supposed to say armor bearer, instead of it saying armor bearer, it said covenant bearer. And I was like, whoa, that gives it a whole other meaning, covenant bearer. Because what do we know when you're a covenant with somebody? That one flesh covenant, but a covenant that will never be broken or altered. And what Jordan and I talked about on Sabbath, the power of that covenant, especially back in the old times, when two men made covenant with each other, and what did they do? They cut their wrists and they mingled their blood together so that, his blood got into his and his got into his, and they became one with their blood. And so it's like, I had never ever seen that before. And anything that I've read about in the Bible, you're reading about the stories of armor bearers and stuff like that. But this translation kept saying covenant bearer. And I was just like, oh, wow. That was just, so then I thought afterwards, it's like, okay, what did an armor bearer mean in the Old Testament, in biblical times? The armor bearer carried the weapons of their leader. Well, covenant bearer, what does that mean now? The covenant bearer carries the vision of their leader's heart. And I was just like, whoa, the covenant bearer comes up alongside the leader no matter what, and carries whatever needs to be done for them, no matter what, right to the end. A heart connection. And that's where it all stems back to, a heart connection. What do you have a heart connection in? With relationships. And all of these signified such significant relationships. Ruth and Naomi, David and Jonathan, Jonathan and his armor bearer, that intimate relationship there. And it all circles back and comes around to that. And when Jordan touched on Sabbath about the whole thing with Shavuot and Mount Sinai and everything and the marriage covenant, that's where it all ties back to. But when you look in the marriage covenant between a husband and a wife, what does that covenant mean? The power of that covenant, that relationship, that love, that devotion, that loyalty, that commitment. You're only supposed to be loyal and committed and dedicated and sold out to your husband or to your wife, whoever it is that God has called you to join together. That powerful relationship in that covenant, and it's a blood covenant. It's an everlasting covenant that's not meant to be broken or altered. And like in the Bible where it's in somewhere in the Old Testament where it talks about if you broke that covenant, you were stoned to death. They took covenant very, very, very seriously. So when I saw that connected to the word bearer, covenant bearer, that was something that was taken very, very seriously. It's just not a light thing. It has to do with the connection of the heart and the connection of the relationship and the connection of the serve to the end, no matter what. So then in the message paraphrase, his armor bearer said to Jonathan, "Go ahead, do what you think best. I'm with you all the way." And that's what I was just saying earlier. You know what? With them all the way. Are we with them all the way? You know, do you have somebody in your life where you can say to them, you know what, no matter what, I'm with you all the way? You know, are our marriages where they need to be, where we say to our spouse, I'm with you all the way? Are our priorities right with our leaders here in this church? I'm with you all the way. You know, anybody that you may be called to into a tight relationship with and a covenant in, you know, can you say to them, I'm with you all the way? NLT says, Jonathan says to his armor bearer, let's go across to the outpost of those pagans. Jonathan said to his armor bearer, perhaps the Lord will help us, for nothing can hinder the Lord. He can win a battle whether he has many warriors or only a few. And Jonathan's armor bearer replied to him, do what you think is best. I'm with you completely, whatever you decide. So you see in all these different translations, the armor bearer's response back to his leader. You know, I'm with you completely. It's whatever you decide. There's nothing in me. And that's what it means to be submitted and to have a servant's heart. Nothing in me. There's nothing about me. It's not about my agenda. It's not about what I want to do. It's not about what I may think how we should do this. You say we should go left, I think we should go right. But you said we're going left, we're going left. You know, you say we should go up, I think we should go down. But because you said we're going up, we're going up. It's being with you completely, 100%. You know, according to your heart, here I am with you. And that's what Ruth said to Naomi, you know, and that's what happened between David and Jonathan. So you just look at these powerful, powerful connections between these servants, so to speak, to their leaders. I mean, Ruth wasn't, you know, she was Naomi's daughter-in-law. They had that relationship to begin with, but Ruth had that servant's heart. So you delve into all these relationships between the servants, and their leaders. And you see just how it all plays out, and it all comes back around to getting accomplished what the leader needs done. Getting accomplished what the leader's vision is. Getting accomplished what the purpose is that Yahweh birthed in their heart. And then that carries out to within our own families. You know, our own families have a calling and a purpose on them. And what has Yahweh given you for the vision of your family? What has Yahweh given you for the vision of your children? What has Yahweh given you for your vision in your place of work? You know, whatever we may be doing. Yeah, you know, whether it is we're a cashier at Market Basket or we're the top executive of some high-tech computer company. It doesn't matter what it is. No position, just like what in the church, no position is too small. Every part is just as important. From being the janitor to being the pastor. Everybody has got an important part to play. So what is the vision that God has birthed in you? How are you to serve in these areas? You know, how are you to serve as a wife? How do you to serve in an essence as a mother? And I say that and not as, you know, I serve here you go, here's your glass of milk, where you could have gotten up and gotten it yourself. You know, no, you go get it. You know, serving as a mother in a different way. You know, I'm talking about in a different aspect here. Serving as a father, you know, training them up and teaching them in the way they should go so that when they are old, they will not depart from their ways. That's our duty as parents, to serve our children. To serve them, to be making sure they're being taught the Word of God. From the time they're in the womb and to the time when they grow up and they leave and they're on their own. That's how us as parents, we're supposed to be doing for our children. Ingraining the Torah and the Word in them so deeply and so significant that when they leave, they know who they are. And they will never, ever break from any of this. You know, how do we serve, you know, as to each other? You know, each other here in the church, you know? How do we to serve in that area? If you see something that needs to be done, do you think to yourself, oh, well, so-and-so is the gardener. She can take care of it. She's expert in weed rooting anyway, so let her do it. Or, well, so-and-so is the one that shovels the driveway. Let him do it. Now, granted, we each do have our positions here that we should be doing. You know, you're the church gardener, you should be doing the church gardening. You know, you're the shovel pusher of snow, you should be pushing the snow. You know, you're the maintenance guy. But there's the rest of us to come along as a team, to step up and to be like, hey, we're here too, we're in this together. This is all ours also, you know? And so, you know, there's a story that I came across. It was of an older gentleman. He was retired. He had worked like his entire life in a supermarket. It was like some down south somewhere. And he retired. He was born again Christian, filled with the Spirit and stuff, and been attending his church for forever, you know. And so he retired, and he knew that, you know, it wasn't for him, you know, retiring. That wasn't the word. We hear Dad say all the time, refire. You know, we don't retire, we refire. We go on. We keep going at it no matter what. And, you know, and sometimes as things happen and you feel like you're starting to get weary and well-doing, that's the time more when it's ever like, no, you know what? That's the devil. And he's trying to stop this from going forward. So, you know what? I put down that, and I'm going to rise up and step up into what I need to do. And so this man was like, you know, he was single. His children are all grown and married and live in different parts of the country and stuff. This is a true story. And so he became the church gardener. And it's actually a big church down south somewhere. I want to say it's one of the larger churches down in Texas. And he was the gardener of the church. And this man, every Monday through Friday, this man was seen all the time in the gardens of the church. Now, like I said, this was an extensive church, so they got a lot of landscaping, a lot of work and stuff like that. And he was there every single day, from 4 to 5 hours a day, taking care of the flowers, watering, weeding, doing everything that needed to be done, because that's who he had become. That's what his calling was, to serve Yahweh, but to serve his church also. That was what he did. Now, they were saying that there were other, you know, big projects that would come along that you needed more than just this man was capable of doing, you know, whatever it was. They were doing big landscaping or whatever. So it required more than one person. They needed a team. So when they needed this team organized, you know, people stepped up and they organized and they came and they joined this man. But other than that, this man's one priority, his one purpose, was to serve in the garden of this church. And he was there every single day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 hours, just doing what he had to do. You know, and there you hear other things too, like, you know, the janitor of a church. You know, they're there all the time. Bigger churches I'm talking about, you know, spending 2, 3, 4 hours a day, making sure that church stays clean, making sure that, you know, the bathrooms are cleaned and the floors are swept and the floors are mopped and stuff. That was his calling. That was his position. That was his place to be, and that was his, you know. Now, when big projects came up with having to clean, like here, you know, what we do here, we have work days, and everybody shows up and we organize and we have a work day. You know, same thing there. But on a normal day, that was his piece. His part of being a servant's heart was to be, you know, the janitor. And then, you know, there's other examples that you can go into in just general realm. Besides the gardener and janitor, you've got maintenance, you've got whatever. But when they were talking about these different things, and this older gentleman who was the gardener of this church, one of the members of the church had said to him, you know, why do you come here Monday through Friday? Why are you coming here? You're retired. You could be out on the golf course swinging a club, you know, out by the lake fishing. You'd be sitting back in your rocking chair drinking iced tea. You know, I'm adding some more of this into than what was actually said to him. But it's like, you know, they had said to him, well, you know, you could be out on the golf course golfing every day, you know. And there are people that are out on the golf course every day golfing 4 or 5 hours a day, you know. And they said, why aren't you enjoying your retirement life? Why aren't you doing these things? You worked all these years, and now you're here and you're doing this. And his reply to them was, because this is something Yahweh, God called me to do. This is something for me to give back to this church that gave to me all those years. And what they didn't know is that at one point in this man's life, he had had some serious struggles. And this church rallied around him, the pastors had rallied around him and helped him out and gave to him. And so he was returning back to them. And his whole thing was like, you know, they were there for me when I needed it. Why wouldn't I be there for them when they need it? So, and then he had said to him, he's like, well, you know, what do you do? What is your occupation? You know, and I don't recall exactly what the guy said he was. So let's just say, you know, he was a car dealer. You know, I don't know why I picked a car dealer, but say he was a car dealer. And so car dealers do long hours, you know. So his occupation was, you know, I'm a car dealer and stuff like that. And the older gentleman was like, so you work 6, 7, 8, maybe 9+ hours a day? And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, well, you know, the older man was like, well, before I retired, you know, I worked an 8-hour work day, a 40-hour work week. Why wouldn't I do that for Yahweh, God? Why wouldn't I do that for God? Why wouldn't I give that to my church now that I have the time to do it? I spent 8 hours a day, 50, you know, well, he probably took vacations and stuff, so say 48 weeks a year, you know, 40 hours a week, 48 weeks a year, I spent serving the world, serving my boss, serving what I needed to do there. Why wouldn't I even think twice about putting that same time and commitment into serving God and to serving the church that I am planted in and to giving back to those that gave into me all those years? And as I was reading that testament, I was like, wow. And the younger guy that was talking to him was like, you know, I never looked at it that way. He's like, you're absolutely right. You know, you're called to be the gardener of the church. You know, why aren't you putting in and I'm talking about, you know, general, why aren't you putting in the 3, 4, 5 hours a day that needs to be done? Or whatever. I'm talking about, you know, people that aren't working and stuff like that. I know a lot of us in here work and stuff. I'm just giving these examples. But it caused this young man to be thinking. And he was like, yeah. He's like, you know, and it's just not about me. It's just not about what I want to do. It's just not about, you know, what I may find, what I would like to do with my time, but it's giving back to those who have given so much to me. And this was what this older man was trying to implant into this younger man. And that older man had so much wisdom, and there was so much wisdom that was coming out of him in that area. And it was like, yeah, why not? What other most amazing thing would you want to do if you had all that time? What else is there but then to spend that time just serving Yahweh and spend that time serving, you know, the leaders you're under and making sure that their vision goes forth full speed ahead like it should, you know, and stepping up and getting in there and doing our thing. So, you know, that was kind of my story that I was going to do in closing. I just thought, you know, this elderly gentleman, like I said, I believe he was, at this point in time when that story had happened, he had been retired for actually quite some time. So he was like up in his 70s or something, and had been doing that, the gardens of the church, since he had retired. And so, you know, it just brings me back to the whole thing was, you know, the servant's heart. Are you willing to do what needs to be done? You know, are you willing to say, all that you say to me, I will do? And so that, in closing, is going to be bringing me to the 2 questions that came out of this. And the first one is, do you have a servant's heart? You know, examine yourself in it. You know, see the characteristics in yourself. Are there some traits of a servant's heart that you possess? Are there some that you don't? The ones that you don't, are there areas that Yahweh is calling you to strengthen them and bond them and get them up in? So do you have a servant's heart? Do you have a heart to serve God? So do you have a servant's heart and a heart to serve God is 2 different things. So to have a servant's heart entails in, you know, are you willing to go out with it all the way to the end? Are you committed and devoted and loyal and submitted? And then have that heart to serve God is that same heart that Yahweh has to be a help to people, to be an encourager to people, to be love to people, to be, you know, the one that's like, yeah, come on, we can do this, we can get this thing done. And the answers to both of those questions should be yes. But if we find ourselves not quite sure on either one of those questions, then we need to examine and see what we see out of that. So just in closing, I'm just going to close with Ephesians chapter 6, 5 and 7. And it says, servants, be obedient to those who are your physical masters, having respect for them and eager concern to please them, in singleness of motive and with all your heart, as service to Yeshua himself, not in the way of eye service as if they were watching you, but only to please men, but as servants, slaves of Yeshua, doing the will of God heartily and with your whole soul. So let's just go forth from this and just, like I said, examine yourself and ask yourself those two questions and see where you think that you may fall in those areas. And be determined to, you know what, we're in this to the end, and we're in this together. And no matter what, like what Ruth said to Naomi, not even death can separate. Amen? Yahweh, we thank you and praise you. We thank you for your word that came forth tonight, Abba, to reveal what it is that you've called your people to do for such a time as this. And Yahweh, we thank you that you have showed us the way to go in developing this type of heart, Abba, and that we would be so sold out and committed to you and to those we serve, that we can say at the end of the day, we gave it our best, we did everything we needed to do, and we know that we are in this to the end no matter what. What you do, what you say, I will do, sir. And what our leaders say, we will do. And it's all to bring you to glory, and that we will hear you say, well done, good and faithful servant. In Yeshua's name, amen.